Welcome into another edition of Jungle Juice here. Sam Gormley and Mick Nelson with you. Mick, how you doing? Welcome into another edition of the show.
And it's another beautiful day in paradise here. It's a very cool, like 95 to 100 degrees in Cincinnati today.
See, I picked the great time of the week to have car troubles. So I've been having to deal with batteries, and it's been 125 degrees outside, and it has been I'm having the time of my life, if you can't tell, in dealing with car troubles, because there's no better time to do it. And even I was talking about this with my dad earlier. It's like there is no your battery only dies when it is 100 degrees or 3 degrees. It's never like last week where it was, 75 and sunny. No, and I get it that weather has an impact on that and so on. But it's just can we just one time have car troubles when it's 70 out? Where it's not that big of a deal.
Man, the worst thing, what's Murphy's Law? Like the worst thing can happen.
The
worst thing always happens, I guess.
Something like that.
It could happen.
We're getting off topic, though, already to start off with, is we want to welcome everyone into Jungle Juice as we are streaming today on a couple of different locations. We have the Jungle Juice podcast YouTube. We have the Jungle Juice Facebook, and then our good buddy Josh Hiles over at Houday Nation Today, WDN Today. We're also streaming on there. So no matter how you're watching, we thank you for tuning in to the first edition across all of those platforms. It's the second episode of the show, and if you're doing it, let us know where you're watching from. You got any topics or comments for us? But today, Mick, our topic is all about the Bengals offense, and we're going to dive into each position group. We're going to do, starting quarterback. Is there a, is Reed Sinnett going to come in there and take the job from Joe Burrow? We got to talk about that. Offensive line, wide receivers, tight end, all of that. But first off, before we get into the specifics on the offense, we do kind of want to start with, is it a down note is the right way to describe it, that earlier today we found out that Ken Anderson will not be making the Hall of Fame.
And,
yes, at least into this year, as they did the senior committee, and I think he was one of about 20 finalists, and then the senior committee votes, and they take 3, and they send it then to the official Hall of Fame committee. And the Hall of Fame committee there then votes on those 3. Now, almost always those 3 then they're in. It's just more of a formality that they have to get officially inducted. But that's how Ken Riley got in last year. But what does Ken Anderson even need to do now at this point?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Just keep on slinging them Bush Lights and keep on living life. I mean, he's a Bengals legend.
It's Keystone.
It's Keystone?
I think he's a Keystone guy.
Bush. Yeah, it is Keystone. That was misinformation on my part. But yeah, just keep
it won't be the first time that we do that on this podcast.
Keep slinging the beer, keep living life, man. He's I think he's a Hall of Famer in my books. MVP season, made it to a Super Bowl, 4-time Pro Bowler. I think he should definitely get I could see the reasoning, if he didn't get in, what is it, first 10 years after
it's something like that. But I mean, he won an MVP and played in a Super Bowl. That to me is those are a couple of things that not a lot of quarterbacks can say. And I hate it that really a lot of it has to do with just this. If Ken Anderson's stats were on and he was a Pittsburgh Steeler, he'd have been in the Hall of Fame 25 years ago. And that's a shame.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Now, I wonder if some of it has to do with us not, the Bengals not doing a Ring of Honor or some type of Hall of Fame ceremony. They were a little late to the party on that, and I wonder if that has something to do with it. I do think the Bengal Gym's Jungle to the Hall definitely helps with the Hall of Fame cases for everybody.
Without question. Yeah, no, but shout out to Bengal Gym for all of the work that he's been doing. And Ken Riley, his son, when he was giving the speech, gave Bengal Gym and it's well deserved. He's done great work in trying to get these guys the recognition, because it's not like we are saying this and these are just us being fans and talking about, he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, like me, I'm all in on Jeremy Johnson. Is Jeremy Johnson actually a Hall of Famer? No. Is he a Hall of Famer In my book, absolutely. Number one, Jeremy Johnson fan here. But I think that, Ken Anderson is a Hall of Famer. His stats line up. They stack up with that.
Yeah, I think there's multiple guys in the Bengals franchise that should be Hall of Famers. I think I've told you about, my feelings about Chad. I think he should have been in by now for sure. And I think I talked to you about this. If you stack up Chad Johnson's resume and Calvin Johnson's resume, they are almost the exact same.
It's same thing with Michael Irvin.
Yeah, 100%.
Just Michael Irvin has a Super Bowl ring.
Yeah, well, it's funny because Calvin Johnson also played for the Lions. So I'm not sure what the case against Chad is there, but I don't have no doubt that he'll get in at some point, and definitely whenever the senior vote comes up,
You think Chad will get in one day?
Oh, 100%. I don't see Chad not getting in at some point in his lifetime or at some point in general.
I really hope you're right when it comes to that, because he deserves it statistically with that. But we wanted to make sure that we started the show in talking about that, because it is important, and it's something that we'll have to look at over these next coming months too, because Willie Anderson's case will continue as he's into that next round. He's a semifinalist. We'll be pushing for Willie. Very well deserved, one of the best right tackles of that era, and helped revitalize the Bengals in that stretch. He was one of the key cogs into bringing, the Marvin Lewis era in those early years. Willie was one of the main reasons that the Bengals had so much success through that, and he deserves a lot of the credit. Because of that, I really want to see him get that gold jacket, and we're going to be vouching for him for sure on this podcast over these next couple of months to get him that vote. For
sure. Willie was a mainstay at offensive tackle for how many years? 12, 13, maybe 11? I can't remember. Over 10 years. All pro for a good chunk of those years. That man deserves to be in for sure.
And I think that the stat goes along is that he went up against all of those Hall of Fame pass rushers and allowed one sack. Yeah, I think maybe Michael Strahan got him. I think was the only one of those Hall of Fame pass rushers that were able to get past him and get in. And it's just like, if you ask, listen to some of those videos that I know Bengal Jim has put together from Michael Strahan saying, like, this dude's legit. Like, this is a guy who is very well deserving of that. And I can't wait to see him get his day in Canton. And hopefully it comes very soon, because it is very well deserved. And I look forward to that. But for a topic of the week, we've got a lot to dive into, so we'll keep on moving on as breaking into this Bengals offense. And what we're going to do is we're just going to go position by position, and we've got it. Some of these positions are set in stone. There aren't going to be any changes. Some of them, some roster battles that we're going to talk about, and some of them it's just basically questions. And we start off with first of the quarterback position, and we'll just have to do our obligated contract talk with Joe Burrow, and there's really been a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah, it's no question at all. Both sides are keeping it very close to the chest. I do err on the side of no news is good news, so I don't think there's any any ill will on either part in the negotiations. I just think I think Joe's probably just focusing on his rehab process, and I don't know if he's really looking to, go into a deep dive in the negotiations yet, or whatever. I imagine they've been negotiating for, the past 8 months or whatever, however long it's been. Not 8 months, but 5 months. But yeah, I'm hoping it happens before the season. But as I said last week, I'm starting to err on the side that this might be a 2024 offseason issue.
The more it goes along, though, and I'm worried is not the right word, because I'm not necessarily worried. This deal is going to get done. It's going to happen whenever it does. But it is a little bit like, okay, like, come on, like, we need to get some semblance of some news here. And I give them props because they have kept it very close to the chest. And it could be one of these things that it is done, and the team's just, not saying anything. They're waiting for the right time to do it. Maybe it'll be right before they run out there against the Browns. He'll rip it off and be like, this calf was fake the entire time. I've been ready to roll, and here we come. As it's like, what is it? The Undertaker flinging open the the casket, and oh yeah, I've signed an extension too. We're ready to roll and take down the AFC North again.
Yeah, that's best case scenario right there. It's great timing. I think it's kind of a crapshoot when it happens. I have no question that it will happen. It's just, it's a matter of timing issue. I don't know if he's waiting until 2024. You get the updated cap numbers for. I think we said it goes. I think you get the 2020. You get the 2020
in like March. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe they're waiting for an updated cap number. I did mention last week, I think this could be a potentially market-setting contract, because everybody looked at the Justin Herbert contract, and he's making what, 52, 53 million a year, and everybody's like, well, Joe will make 55, but I don't know. It could be market-setting. He could be making 60, 65, so I guess, maybe that's what's holding it up. I don't know, but I don't have any question that this thing's going to get done.
I think the biggest question with the quarterback room goes to question, and we can just leave it as simple as this, and I think it'll be a question that we'll have to keep on asking is, Mick, in fact, I put it in the YouTube. If you're watching with us on the Jungle Juice Podcast YouTube channel, I put a poll question on there, and it says, who will be the Bengals' backup quarterback against Cleveland? Now, we're saying that let's put it in the case that Joe Burrow is healthy and starting. So if not, who would be the starting quarterback in Cleveland? And I'll just ask you this question, Mick. Is it going to be Trevor Siemian, Jake Browning, or somebody else?
Wait. Are you saying if it's not Joe Burrow?
So I'm saying, I asked it as who is going to be the backup quarterback this year.
Okay.
But I'm saying that is the backup quarterback against Cleveland, but you can't say, oh, it's going to be somebody else because the true backup quarterback is going to be starting because Burrow's hurt that day. So what I'm saying is who is going to be the backup quarterback this year for the Cincinnati Bengals?
Yeah. So I mean, my personal, my pick, I'm going to go with Jake Browning. I think he has essentially won the backup gig. He looks a lot more comfortable back there than Trevor did the past couple weeks. He's got a lot of mobility in the pocket. He can make plays out of structure. Kind of reminds me a lot of Jeff Driscoll. And, my point with the quarterback position is at the end of the day, neither quarterback's winning many games if they're thrust into action, for an extended period of time. So I think the question at that point is, who's the more entertaining guy to watch? And, I think it's no question that Jake Browning's more entertaining. He can make more plays. He had a really ill-advised pass, though, last week against the Falcons. That was where he tried to do too much, and he could have easily gotten a few yards on a scramble. I couldn't remember what down it was. Maybe he was just trying to, make something out of nothing.
I do know that Paul Dehner Jr. in The Athletic wrote, I think it was over the weekend, earlier this week, I read the post, and he made an interesting name that dropped up, and it's not one that because, if we're being honest, you saying Jake Browning, it's not like you are saying that with like 100% confidence that, yes, Jake Browning is a backup quarterback in this league. You're just saying it's pretty much, he sucks the least out of these two, correct in saying that?
Yeah, out of these two, we haven't seen Reed. What's Stinnett play?
I don't think that's Sinnett. I think the XFL legend.
Yes, I'm surprised we haven't really seen him get any action.
He is going to play. Zach Taylor did say in his press conference earlier this week that he is going to play on Saturday against the Commanders, probably late in the game. But here's the wild card that Paul Dehner brought up: is who is the Bengals' backup quarterback for these last couple of years?
Brandon Allen.
Where is Brandon Allen right now? Do you remember which team he went to?
San Fran.
What does San Francisco have a lot of?
Quarterbacks.
So who means that he's probably going to be on the chopping block?
Is he insinuating that Sam Darnold might come to Cincinnati and be Joe's backup quarterback?
He's insinuating that Brandon Allen might be able to come back.
Oh, that Brandon Allen may come back?
Because here's the thing. Listen, is Brandon Allen good? No. But would you feel better about Brandon Allen than Jake Browning?
So
again, I love these questions because it's like, Would you rather hang by your toenails for a week or hang by your hair for a week?
So from a pure entertainment standpoint, no, because I think Jake Browning can make some, just crazy out of structure plays that Brandon Allen can't make. Now, somebody did post in the Houday Nation chat or Houday Nation group, and we'll go over the post at some point in our post of the week section, but pretty much he said the point of the backup QB is to sit in the film room with Joe, go through the film, go through strategy, pretty much, help be a second set of eyes with NFL defenses. And I think that's where Brandon Allen was crucial to Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow trusted him.
Yeah. So,
and that's my question is how much of this will be Zach Taylor going to Joe Burrow and saying, who do you want as your backup?
I think that could be definitely a possibility. I think Joe definitely probably has a say in this. And that might be another argument for Simeon too, because it's not like Simeon is just making ill-advised passes or anything like that. Simeon just doesn't have an arm. He just underthrows everything. But if you're looking at his targets, I mean, I think a lot of them are decent reads, single coverage for the most part. He just, doesn't have the arm talent that, neither does Jake Browning either.
Yeah, because, I mean, if they did, guess what they wouldn't be? They wouldn't be in a backup quarterback battle right now. They'd be potentially competing in one of these teams to start at the quarterback position. And that's where, like, the Brandon Allen point was one that made me go, Now, I don't know if Brandon Allen, he obviously left for a reason. Now, I don't know if that reason was, the Bengals saying, Brandon, thank you very much for these last couple of seasons. Good job. Good luck. Like, get on out here. Or was that him thinking that he could get a better situation somewhere else? But if you were that way, why would you go to San Francisco, where they have a lot of quarterbacks? And that's what kind of makes me wonder if the Bengals might have said, hey, Brandon, you need to go somewhere else now.
So here's the thing with San Fran, and I don't know. I thought I saw something about Trey Lance is that the Niners are actively shopping him right now. So I think the reason why I don't think Brandon Allen is essentially leaving is one, given San Fran's history at the quarterback position, injury-wise, those guys are going to definitely keep three quarterbacks on the roster. And if you have Trey Lance and Brock Purdy, and you're, and I think, Trey Lance has the talent, Brock Purdy has the, I guess more of a resume at this point for sure. I think you're going to actively shop one of those guys. So I think I don't see Kyle Shanahan parting ways with Brock Purdy. I think Trey Lance is probably the odd man out in that situation, in that he, some team could potentially trade for him for the value that he could bring to some other NFL franchise.
And that franchise is not the Cincinnati Bengals.
No, it's not. It's maybe Tampa Bay, maybe who's quarterback needy right now?
Arizona? Yeah, see, that's the thing. Yeah, but I'm trying to replace or fill the void of Kyler until he comes back. Would a team like Minnesota go for him that, has Kirk Cousins, but contract coming up? I don't know. It's conversations to have, and I think the biggest thing is that nobody feels confident in the backup quarterback. But I think you could easily say that about just about every team in the NFL, that you don't feel very confident in the backup quarterback position.
You shouldn't. I mean, he's a backup.
Yes.
For a reason. I mean, unless if so, I was telling somebody about this earlier. Like it's kind of like, the better your starting quarterback is, I think the worse your backup quarterback should be. So, because you want to foster competitions with those mid to low tier quarterbacks out there. That way you can maybe find a better option out there. But you have a quarterback like Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes or Herbert. You don't see these guys having like robust backup QBs just ready to go. Well,
yeah, because most of the best backup quarterbacks think they're a starter.
Yeah,
and they want to go to a place that they compete and be a starter. Because listen, it's like Andy Dalton. Is Andy Dalton one of the best backup quarterbacks in the league right now? I mean, maybe you could make that argument.
Probably.
He doesn't want to come and sit under Joe Burrow. Like, why would he do that?
There's no benefit to doing that. I mean, we're looking at Andy Dalton here, and not to get too much off topic here, but Andy Dalton's fully embraced like that mentor role as a backup, fringe starter for a couple weeks, and then you let the rookie take over. Andy Dalton wouldn't serve a purpose in Cincinnati, with Joe Burrow under center.
No, with no question about that. Moving on here to the next position group, the running back position, and we'll start at the top of that with Joe Mixon. And the first question on Joe Mixon, and then we're going to talk about what happened in the last week with Joe Mixon, just because I have some stuff to get off my chest about that. And Mick, I'm gonna leave it to you very broadly. Is this the last year of Joe Mixon in Cincinnati?
No question.
I agree.
This will be the last year of Joe Mixon in Cincinnati, and personally, as a fan, I'm very grateful for what Joe's given to this franchise, and he's done nothing but embrace the brand. He's been a great locker room guy, and he got so much flack coming out of college for that incident that happened, and he's just done nothing but try to prove himself. And but yeah, this whole media situation's kind of rough.
Yeah, and that's we can go there right now because we'll take a step back here, and I'll fully admit that in my day-to-day job, I work in the media. I get it. Small town Kentucky, it is not covering as a beat reporter for a high-level sports team, but I work in the media. So when I hear comments about people not wanting to talk to the media because of quote-unquote unfair treatment or whatever the hell it was that he was talking about, it kind of bugs me. It kind of bugs me because it's just all of the anti-media stuff. We're not going to get, you do not want me on that soapbox because we've got a lot more to talk about than getting me on that. But when I read, I guess it was Monday night, something like that earlier this week, when Joe Mixon came out saying that he's not going to talk to, four reporters, James Rapine from Sports Illustrated, you had Ben Baby from ESPN, Kelsey Conway from The Inquirer, and Jay Morrison from Pro Football Network. And he pretty much said, due to quote unquote like unfair reporting or something like that for him. And I'm just kind of like, okay, they covered his arrest, which guess what? That happens to be their job. And they gave the facts and so on. And then on the other end, I know James Rapine said that he thinks it's also that he was upset that he was covering and bringing up points that he deserved to have his contract restructured and potentially even be cut from the team. Also, valid points.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if this is the case of the Cincinnati beat writers, Joe Mixon should probably, especially regarding the contract issue and in the restructuring, Joe Mixon should just not be talking to any national reporters this season, because I think the national consensus was that Joe Mixon was a cut candidate going into the 2023 season. It's just kind of a shame for everybody but PDJ. It sounds like PDJ is just going to be Joe Mixon's number one liaison to the media or something like that. I mean, but yeah, I mean, you have Rapine, who I've grown up listening to, that I respect the hell out of, and Ben Baby's been covering the Bengals for a while. Kelsey Conway the same way. It's it's
Jay Morrison.
Jay Morrison. Oh yeah, Jay. Can't
forget about Jay. Listen, and that's the thing. That's like everybody loves Jay. Like, what's wrong with him? But I think that to me is my issue. Is it's like it seems like part of his problem was that they were saying that he needed to be cut or needed to have his contract restructured. And let's be real, he was vastly overpaid last year for what he turned out to do. And here's my other thing: you don't like it, play better.
Yeah. I don't know. I know not a lot of people are big fans of grading on the PFF scale, but I mean, he's still ranked as a top 15 running back. I know he's getting paid like what number? Where's he at on the pay scale?
Probably top 5. Like, I mean, and that's what I'm just like, is Joe Mixon has never been a true top tier running back. If we're just being 100% honest, he's never been a top tier running back. Has he been a second tier? Potentially. Yeah, I think an argument could be made there.
I can't wait for 15, 20 years from now. And I really hope I see people making the same arguments for Joe Mixon that they're making for Corey Dillon right now. Different subject for a different day. So
are you going to get on your Corey Dillon soapbox?
Potentially, yeah. So Joe Mixon, believe it or not, and this is where I don't think he's overpaid. If he ranked 14th out of running backs on PFF last year in terms of overall grading, and right now he is 12th or 13th highest average pay per year and
post restructuring, post contract.
Yeah, okay, never mind. I forgot that
because he was going to make about $12 million.
Okay,
year.
So that would put him as a top 5 running back.
Yeah, and he is not a top 5 running back.
No,
and nor has he played like a top 5 running back.
No. I guess you could make the argument though that he's been running behind, pretty bad offensive lines for the past 5-6 years and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, he hasn't been a top 5 running back. And I totally forgot about the restructuring in terms of the actual numbers. But yeah, that would have made him a top 5 paid running back. And I don't know.
And that's just kind of where I'm like, and I'm with you. This will be the last year that we see Joe Mixon in Bengals stripes. Now, some of that could go with, the development of, Chris Evans as he continued to develop, Chase Brown as he continued to develop, Travion Williams, because I think that the hope is that Chase Brown is the next Joe Mixon as far as, filling that void next year. And I get it. It's preseason. Chase Brown, disappointment's not the right word. Non-factor? Would you say?
I think anybody running behind the backup offensive line.
And that's a good question. Is that the reason that he has really been? I don't even know what the word is to describe how it's been so far through the preseason for Chase Brown.
See, so he had a really bad yards per carry against the Falcons. I think both running backs were under 2 yards per carry, if I remember correctly. And I don't know, because it seemed like, so you never really saw Chase Brown rip a run, but you saw him hit the hole hard. You saw him, being a very north and south type of runner. And really any time that would bring it would have brought his yards per carry down. You got Jackson Kirkland just freaking whiffing on guys 24/7. And next thing you know, it's a 5-yard tackle per loss. And I don't know if any running back could have really gotten out of.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because I think that can kind of lead us into the next question here of that third down back. I guess the Samaje Perine role is one that is on this team. There's no question about that. Who is going to fill the void of Samaje Perine? Because if we're being honest, and I don't really want this to sound like it's just me crapping on Joe Mixon this entire podcast, because I don't want Joe Mixon to put me on his media list. We're not going to be allowed to have him on the podcast, and it's episode number 2, Mick. He's not a third down back. Like, he doesn't need to be in there all 3 plays.
No.
Is it Chris Evans? Is it Travion Williams? Or will Chase Brown come out?
So I'm very torn on the situation, because Chase Brown does fill the Perine role from a rushing perspective. I think I see a lot of similarities in his rushing style. But we haven't really seen Chase Brown as a pass blocker, and I feel like that's what you need. You need the best, pass blocking running back there potentially on third down plays. And I think that's where it could be Evans or Williams. Both of them graded actually fairly well in the pass blocking department, given that they both had very limited snap share last year. But both of them did, grade fairly well in the high 70s, low 80s in pass blocking. So I think it's probably one of those two. If I had to give the edge, just based off of what I've seen on the 2 preseason games, I'm going to give the edge to Chris Evans early on. But, maybe Chase Brown does develop his pass blocking a little bit, and he does take that role, because I think from a rushing perspective, I think Chase Brown is ahead of both of those guys.
And see, that's a little bit misleading too, because Travion Williams hasn't played in the preseason because he had the injury. Now, is he going to play on Saturday? That's a good question. And I think he can easily, because I think Travion Williams coming into camp was the favorite to be that third down running back. And now with that injury, and that's just how it works, is he probably opened up that competition for Chris Evans. Now, I think there is still some things with Chris Evans that is do you really trust him as a running back?
See, that's where his that's where I'm not too confident. Now Chris Evans, if I'm looking at grades on now, I mean his rushing grade was also still pretty decent. So was Travion's. So I think you could trust really any of those three guys. I think it just comes down to who the coaching staff wants, obviously. And I don't know. I would say it's probably between Evans and Williams just early on, at least.
And I think if you're asking me to make my prediction as far as who will start here in 2.5 weeks in that game against the Cleveland Browns, I'm leaning towards Travion Williams, just because I think that there's more trust there. And I think this coaching staff values trust a lot.
Yeah, no, they
so
definitely
that's where I'm
brought him
leaning
back for a
towards.
5th year for a reason. Yeah.
Yes. I completely agree with that. We'll shift gears here, go a little wider for the wide receivers. What do you think? Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, they're going to make the team? What do you think?
I don't know. It's a very up in the air kind of thing going on with that.
Yeah.
But,
did you know that Jamar Chase had some drop issues at sometimes? Maybe you will. But I think, wide receiver 4 has been kind of a question mark as to who would be kind of that first wide receiver off the bench, or the guy, if they want to go 4 wide, who would it go to? And I think that the guy has stepped up and has really solidified himself. And in my eyes, that's Trenton Irwin.
Yeah. Trenton Irwin obviously has the most experience out of all the backup wide receivers on the team. He came in and filled Jamar's role admirably in those 4 weeks. And I think you need a guy like that potentially ready to come fresh off the bench. Now, that's not to say there isn't, big potential for Charlie Jones or Andre Yoshavash to take that wide receiver 4 role at some point during the season. But if we're talking right now, week one of those receivers go down, I mean, Trenton Irwin is more than likely that guy.
And I think that there's trust in him for that. And I think probably Yoshivas and Charlie Jones are pretty much on the same playing field for that, as far as behind him. And because I think Yoshivas has been good. He's had his moments, but I think Charlie Jones has proven more against better talent for what he did in college. And I think that will mean something. I mean, listen, he played the Big Ten. There's a little bit of a difference between going up against Big Ten cornerbacks and going up against, Ivy League cornerbacks.
Now it might be because of the fact, though, and not to talk down on Charlie Jones and all this is purely for my entertainment, but it might have been because he had the GOAT, Aiden O'Connell, thrown to him all year last year.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm excited for Charlie Jones. That was a pick I really liked.
Mm-hmm.
I really was excited when they got him, and I was really excited when they got Yoshivas too, just because the RAS score for him was absolutely off the chest. Now, we're mentioning all these wide receivers, but there's one wide receiver who somehow keeps sticking around because Darren Simmons, special teams coordinator, loves him some Stanley Morgan.
He does. I think the whole sorry to cut you off there.
No, I was going to say, he's Stanley Morgan. Is he going to make the team as a 7th wide receiver, or will he be a practice squad guy that they can bring up on specific weeks that they know they might need it?
So the Bengals usually keep 7 wide receivers each year, and Stanley Morgan will be that number 7 wide receiver. He is highly valued on special teams by Darren Simmons and highly valued in the run blocking game by Zach Taylor. So I think that the coaching staff does have a level of trust with Stanley Morgan. And yeah, he's always seems to be that wide receiver number 7 every year, or maybe 6 or 5 or 6. I don't know. But yes, I think Stanley Morgan does make the team. The team does carry 7 wide receivers this year.
See, it wouldn't shock me if they try to throw him onto the practice squad and pull him up for specific weeks, because here's the thing about Stanley Morgan is he brings you nothing in the receiving game.
No.
Nothing. And in that realm, it's almost like you should almost classify him as a tight end in that realm, as far as in that room of sorts. I know he's not a tight end, and I'm not trying to say that he is. But as far as I mean, he brings you nothing.
From a receiving perspective, yes. From a run blocking perspective,
Oh,
no. He does
yeah,
bring some
and
value.
I won't disagree with that at all.
See, I don't think they'll stash him on the practice squad because I think as soon as they do that, Bill Belichick's going to snatch him up. That's his next Matt Slater right there, potentially.
But yeah, I think it'll be interesting with Stanley Morgan. That'll be a decision that it'll come down to because I mean, it might be a decision between do you want Stanley Morgan or do you want Michael Thomas, the safety? Both are special teams guys. Mike Thomas was a special teams captain last year. Are you keeping 5 safeties or 7 wide receivers? Those are some of
So,
those discussions that'll come down to it. And we'll talk about the defense next week in depth, but it's interesting.
yeah. Not to preview the defense too much, I do think they're going to keep both of those guys. Um, Honestly, there's going to be an odd man out on in the safety room. They typically carry 4 safeties a year. It's going to be that battle between Tyson Henderson and Michael Thomas, I think. And I don't know. I kind of, and not to put any shame to Nick Scott, I'm kind of regretting the Nick Scott signing just because I don't want to really let either of those guys go. Tyson Anderson has shown a lot of potential athletically. He looked like, you know, a man amongst boys against the Packers 2 weeks ago. I just think he's got so much potential. And then Michael Thomas has been that, you talk about the trust factor. He's been a very trusted player on this team for a few years now, and especially in the special teams game. So I don't think they carry 5 safeties. I do think they carry 4 wide receivers. Um, and yeah, I think that's going to be the bigger question. I don't think we're going to see the Bengals only carry 6 wide receivers this year, especially when they have had no track record of only keeping 6.
It'll be interesting, and it'll just be some of those decisions that we'll have to watch as it goes along. When we move towards the offensive line, though, I mean, your starters there are set. Orlando Brown Jr., Cordell Volson, Ted Karras, Alex Kappa, and Jonah Williams. Done. It's set. That's who's starting, barring an injury, against Cleveland week 1. Then
Yep.
it's that next level that is real interesting because you've got some guys that are a little controversial. Maybe a guy by the name of Jackson. Is it Carmen? Carmen? Is he a little
Now,
controversial?
let's give Jackson some credit here. Out of all the offensive linemen on the team right now, he is not the worst Jackson, an offensive lineman. So kudos to Jackson Carmen for not being the worst Jackson on the offensive line. That title goes to Jackson Kirkland. My God, that guy looked awful. But yeah, I think that the big roster spot competition, especially when La'el Collins comes off the PUP list, is going to be, are the Bengals going to keep Jackson Carmen or are they going to keep Hakeem Adeniji? And I'm going to give, unfortunately, I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm giving the edge to Hakeem Adeniji. I think I've seen enough of Jackson Carmen to effectively give up on him.
Here'll be the interesting thing with Jackson Carmen is he a Billy Price, where they can trade him for somebody, maybe a roll of Sherman, and it'll get something out of it. And will he turn into B.J. Hill? Probably not, but can you get something for him? One of the interesting things that stood out to me, though, in the offensive line was your center for the first half of the game against the Falcons, Max Sharping, because that has been a worry, and I think we might have even talked about this last week, is, if Ted Karras goes down, Trey Hill, oof. And, I mean, if it's Max Sharping, though, I mean, I don't feel great, but I sure feel a lot better than Trey Hill.
Yeah, that was a big surprise to see Max Sharping taking reps at the center position. Now, I do think, Sharping definitely makes the team. I do think Trey Hill also makes the team this year. But yeah, you talked last week about, the Bengals grabbed a few guys that got waived from teams last year. Could they be looking for a center out of out of those guys, that get waived? Is there a potential, value backup center that you can find in that market whenever that market um, comes to fruition? And I'm starting to lean towards that may be the best case scenario for the backup center gig.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think that like Cordell Volson in OTAs took some snaps at center, but I don't know that you really want to do that because then you need a left guard, and who's going to play left guard? Are you going to put Max Sharping there? Like, is that making you feel that much better? And listen, I hope Ted Karras doesn't get hurt. I think he might be the most important position on that offensive line. I think a strong argument can be made that he is the most important there, at least until La'el Collins comes back. I think your tackles are important, but if La'el Collins comes back and you get an injury to one of those tackles, you can slide Collins into that position. But I think that Karras is really important, and they need something to happen because what happens if they get into the playoffs again and the same thing happens as last year where they're trying to just find anybody potentially that can block somebody? And then, oh, hello, there's Chris Jones.
Yeah.
Maybe, if he actually decides he wants to play this year.
Yeah, no, that is a big worry to have, and I think the Bengals largely addressed that, other than the center position in the offseason. I mean, they did bring in Cody Ford, which I do think will be a good depth piece, either as a backup tackle or guard. I think he's going to be a backup guard though.
But a guy that can play tackle.
Yes,
like if you need him to play tackle, he can play tackle.
Offensive
and
line.
I think that's really big for this team, is that as a whole, they got a lot of versatile guys.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, like if we're being honest, Jackson Carman has played guard, so he can play tackle or guard. Smith has played tackle and guard. Adeniji has played tackle and guard. Sharping has played guard and center. So you've got a lot of versatility, which is really big for this team because you don't know when those injuries are going to come.
Yeah, for sure.
I know you are not a Deontay Smith guy at all.
No, I know you were saying earlier that he's, there's been reports that he's had a good camp, but I do think he's the odd man out until La'el Collins comes back, and then it's going to be also Adeniji and Carman, Adeniji or Carman that's going to be off of this team. I do have a bold take on this offensive line, to shift the focus a little bit more to the starters. And I think one of the big storylines early on is how Jonah Williams and Orlando Brown are going to be at the tackle positions, because they are essentially playing their opposite tackle role. You largely have seen Orlando Brown on the right side throughout his NFL career, and you've seen Jonah Williams only play at left tackle. I'm really interested to see how that situation turns out, because they don't have a cakewalk in week one against the Browns. You have you've got one elite edge rusher and one very good edge rusher in Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith going up against this tackle tandem where, there is a lot of nuance involved with what they are both doing.
Yeah, and that'll obvious that's a question. And I mean, you look, welcome to the AFC North.
Yeah.
Like that is the AFC North. I mean, heck, the Ravens just signed Clowney. Steelers, we know what they have. So it's just, Clowney's on the downside of his career, but still, I mean, those are dudes. Like, regardless, Clowney can still wreck somebody. And it'll be interesting. Now, I do have, I guess I'll ask you this question, is at the end of the season, let's talk ceiling and floor for this offensive line, whether we go PFF grade or however we want to do it, rankings. Can this be a top 10 offensive line?
I think it could be a fringe top 10 offensive line. I'm still not sold that it's going to be I don't think it's going to be well within the top 10, like at a top 5,
What does it need to be for Burrow to cook, I guess, is because, we've seen, Hell,
it could be the worst offensive line in the league and Burrow still cooks. We've seen that 2 years ago.
And let me clarify that with following it up and saying, like, what would be the I guess for Burrow to have an elite season and for this offense to live up to its full potential, that offensive line needs to be in what range, do you think? 15th?
I would say middle of the pack. I mean, middle of the pack or even like middle to like 15 to 20, I think is fine. Which I think is probably where the offensive line was last year. And, what do you know? These guys did rattle off, how many wins in a row?
10 straight, 1 to 10.
10 straight wins in a row at the end of the season. They really gelled together towards the end, and it's not like they were an elite offensive line, but, I think you just need, mid to, maybe worse than average offensive line play for Joe to cook, essentially.
One of the position groups that I skipped as we were going through is we can't forget about the tight ends. And with that, the tight end room is interesting in the realm of Irv Smith. The one thing that we know about him is if you ask Viking fans, what are they going to say if you mention Irv Smith? Injury prone. So that to me is my question, Mick, is how confident are you in those other tight ends? Guys like Drew Sample, Mitchell Wilcox. How confident are you in them if something happens to Irv Smith?
So I'm confident. I don't know if confident's the best way to put it. The person I am most confident in, or the tight end I'm most confident in, is obviously Drew Sample. And actually, I did have a point on here. I think him being back could be huge. I know in terms of a run blocking percentage, I think you could be seeing some 2 tight end sets, especially in run fits, where he could be aiding a tackle early on, especially week 1 against those 2 edge rushers in Cleveland. But yeah, I in terms of confidence level on True Sample, Devin Asiasi, or Mitchell Wilcox, or whoever.
Tanner Hudson, right?
Tanner Hudson. Hey, he graded pretty well in one of them preseason games, but
it doesn't sound like there's much confidence.
Not a whole lot of confidence, but also.
But how much confidence is there in Irv Smith?
I think from an athletic standpoint, there's a good amount of confidence in Irv Smith. I mean, his issue is just staying healthy. And, I think Schubert said in one of the posts, or maybe in a comment earlier this week, like, Irv Smith's ACL is a ticking time bomb or something like that. But, yeah, I would say from an athletic standpoint, I am fairly confident in Irv Smith. I think Joe Burrow will find a way to unlock him. But, we could also see Joe Burrow finding a way to unlock Drew Sample if Irv Smith does eventually go down.
And I really think that you could see tight end be one of those rooms, too, that is added in waiver wires.
Yeah.
Like, is there one of those guys that gets dropped? And I could see the Bengals reaching out and grabbing somebody, maybe hoping that there's a better Devin Asiasi out there.
Yeah, a Devin Asiasi that can actually catch the ball.
Yeah, and I mean, then if we're being honest, most of those guys aren't going to be getting released. So, and if they are, they're not going to be at the waiver wire order that the Bengals are going to be picking from. Because, the Bengals are going to be towards the bottom of that portion again for finishing with as good of a record as they had. I think with Irv Smith needs to be a average to below average tight end for this Bengals offense to reach its potential.
Which is what they've really had the past 2 years, and they've gotten decent production out of. They got decent production out of Uzomah and Hurst, and landed. Those guys, landed pretty big paydays in the following offseason with other teams. So I agree with you. I think you don't need a top 5 or even a top 10 tight end. You need somebody that can come in, do his job, and yeah, let Joe Burrow find you.
We appreciate those that have tuned in here today, too, as well on Facebook and YouTube. Make sure if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button so you get notified, and follow us on Jungle Juice podcast page, and then also follow the WDN Today page and comment if you got any questions or comments for us. If you want to call us an idiot, feel free. Because, listen, there will be things that we will say probably at least 3 times a show that will be idiotic to some of you. Please let us know. Call us out. We will we're okay. We're big boys. We have thick skin. We can listen to you. Or maybe you just want to tell us that we suck, and that's fine too. You can do that. Or if you like the show, or if you have anything that you want us to discuss, maybe you are the number one Thad Moss fan in the world, and you want to bring him back. Then go for it. Speak your mind. As Jared's locking in, Jared, appreciate you taking the time to tune in. Who day?
Who day, Jared?
Kicking game. Evan McPherson is Evan McPherson. There we go. Topic over.
Yeah.
What else is there to say? I mean, there's no controversy. I have never been more confident in a kicker in a long time. I don't know that I've ever been more confident in a kicker in my lifetime as a Bengals fan.
I don't think I've been confident in a kicker since, the only other kicker I was even
Shane Graham.
Shane Graham, yeah.
Except against the Jets in the playoffs.
We don't want to talk about that. It was good otherwise. Didn't have much of a leg. Definitely did not have the bring back the short King Moss. That's our solution at tight end.
Is that Moss? Oh gosh,
Hubert. Whenever you eventually listen to us,
well, see, he appreciated the Thad Moss mention on last week's podcast. I got a text message from him saying that he very much appreciated getting the Thad Moss shout out. But
number one Thad Moss stand right there.
Yes, he's going to have the jersey very soon. I'm surprised if he doesn't already. I think with the kicking game is we can talk about the other side of the kicking game and kick return. Mick, I'm going to ask you, and this is not going to be a bold prediction by any means, but it is the Browns game. Coin toss is up. Bengals win the toss, and they say, screw it, we want the ball. Who's going back to receive that kick?
I think it's going to be Charlie Jones. I think that's essentially, they drafted him for that backup slot role or eventually that starting slot role, once Tyler Boyd eventually leaves, which I think is probably inevitable after this season. But, yeah, I think that they drafted him for his prowess in the return game.
I think that you got to keep an eye to Travion Williams. He wasn't bad.
No, he was a pretty good kick returner last year.
Chris Evans, I think, was okay.
No. I think Chris Evans was booty cheeks at receiver. Sorry, Chris Evans, if you ever see this.
Oh, I thought you were apologizing for like an explicit remark there of calling him booty cheeks. I was like, no, you're fine to say that. I mean, we're on the podcast. We're allowed to say whatever we want.
Fair enough. But yeah, I Chris Evans, I just have a lot of memories of him not even making it to the 15-yard line after taking the ball out. So
I think with Chris Evans, he's almost too confident in himself.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. That's just.
But let's be real.
Chris Evans. It's not. That's
could
not.
It be it could be Darius Phillips. So, or Brandon Tate. Like, let's be real. We could.
Brandon Wilson. Can we give him a roster spot?
See, Brandon Wilson was elite, and then the ACL happened, and then he got it. But I think if you had me make my prediction today, I would probably lean towards Travion Williams as the kick returner, and I think punt returner would be Charlie Jones.
Somebody, Jared mentioned in the chat here, I'm guessing he was referring to Stanley Morgan.
I don't know that I'd
know about that.
Stanley Morgan is a blocking guy. He'll be on the field. I think if he makes the team, he'll definitely be on the field. But Charlie Jones is 100% a candidate, and if he gets back there, it would not shock me.
Yep.
Not in the least. Maybe that's where we see Jackson Carman. They put him back there.
He's got to provide value somewhere, Sam. He did good. He did good in that one playoff game. We'll give
yes, where it was snowing.
Before, he is not the worst Jackson in the offensive line room right now. So kudos to Jackson Carman for both of those things.
Yeah, Jared, we are 100%. Jared writes and says Carman needs to go. Yeah, I think most Bengals fans. He to me is the one guy that is going to be the most interesting. In about a week when they go through these final cuts, he will be. I think the one. I don't think if he gets cut that it'll be a surprise by any means, but I think he's the one that I think will raise the most eyebrows.
Yeah.
Unless barring some major cut that we don't like, and I can't think, because I really can't think of anybody else on the roster that would make me go, Oh, that could get cut. Can you?
I mean, it's the other tackle. It's Hakeem Adeniji. I think both of them are
But
on the team, though.
I don't think Adeniji makes me go,
He kind
like
of,
if he gets cut.
honestly, he'd make me do that more than Jackson Carman just because Hakeem has proved to be the more reliable guy out of those two.
Which says a lot about Jackson Carman.
Unfortunately, it does. But part of me kind of wonders with Jackson Carman, not to make any excuses for the guy because I am out of them. But this guy came into the league playing primarily the left tackle position, and I don't know. Like, we never really gave him much of a shot there. You kind of just bounced him around a guard. You threw him in a right tackle. You never got him at a solidified spot to try and foster and grow. And I wonder if, I don't want to say the word fail, but I wonder if the Bengals coaching staff didn't utilize Jackson Carman in the best way that they could have in the past 3 years.
But here's what I would say is, just to play a little devil's advocate, is, or does that prove that he's not an NFL player, that he can't be more flexible in playing those different positions?
It could. I mean, I'm not.
And I don't know the answer to that. Like, it might shock you, Mick, but I'm not necessarily built like an offensive lineman, so I'm not an expert in offensive line play. I know I look dead on at left tackle, but it. So I don't know. It's just, I think Carman is going to be the one guy that when they release the cut list, he'll be the first name I look for.
Yeah, I think he'll be the first name I look for too. I think that pretty much every roster spot is essentially set, other than there's a handful here and there, but the big one, the big battle is going to be those two guys, and I think you're going to see both of those guys still on the roster until Lyle Collins comes off the PUP list, and then there's a conversation to be had.
I do agree there. As we wrap up here for this, just in general, preseason game number 3 is like, I know I actually get to watch this one, which I'm thrilled about, because the past 2 I have had other commitments that I've been able to watch live. Is there anything you're looking for specifically?
Not really. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of third and fourth stringers. You're going to see. I don't think you're going to see any. Even second stringers in for the most part.
You mentioned earlier, and if you missed it, you'll have to go back and listen. You mentioned that you think Jake Browning is the leader in the backup quarterback position. Can Trevor Siemian play himself into being the leader on Saturday?
He could, and I don't even know if it's a play thing. I think it's just a matter of what this coaching staff prefers. Do they prefer the guy that's going to be more electric on the field if Joe Burrow ever did go down, or are they going to want the guy who is in the film room with Joe Burrow breaking down everything and trying to help Joe Burrow with his process? And I think that's where it's truly a toss-up battle.
Because I think the biggest thing is that, I mean, and there is, and I'd be shocked if this happens, but do they keep both?
No.
And go 3 quarterbacks?
No.
I'd be surprised.
They've shown no track record of keeping 3 quarterbacks on the roster.
It's been a long time. Like, you'd have to go back to the Jordan Palmer days where they were keeping three quarterbacks back in that stretch. JT O'Sullivan and those guys back in that era.
Yeah.
Gosh, now I want to start naming random Bengals backups for under Carson Palmer.
JT O'Sullivan, actually. I can't remember what
he's got a really good podcast.
He does. He's got a very good film breakdown podcast or YouTube channel or whatever. And it was great. I watched the CJ Stroud breakdown where CJ Stroud was pretty bad against the Jets, and really interesting takes just from JT there. So.
And it just shows you on how much these guys know. Talent doesn't always. It's like, I love listening. In fact, it came out that the Monday Night Football game, Bengals Rams, it'll be Chris Fowler, Louis Riddick, and Dan Orlovsky will be on the call for that, because there's 2 Monday night games on that. So I guess they technically get Monday Night Team B. But Orlovsky, I know, is kind of. I like him though, because when he starts talking ball, like, and actually breaking down, he's fascinating to listen to. Now he does get a little bit hot takey at times. That's kind of ESPN though, but
that's the ESPN MO, I think.
But when he
take.
starts and that's what, and the same thing with Lewis Riddick. Like I hope Chris Fowler with that does as his play-by-play guy in some instances just shuts up and lets those guys talk.
Yeah, especially Lewis Riddick. I'm a huge Lewis Riddick guy.
Yeah. Especially because you got Lewis Riddick, defensive guy, Orlovsky, offensive guy. You kind of do that. That's why I liked watching the Manning cast so much for the Monday Night Football and I hope that comes back because I just like listening to Peyton and Eli. I don't even care much about the guests that they bring in. I just like it when they just talk about the game because those guys have forgotten more about football than we'll ever know.
Yeah, 100%.
But I think it'll be interesting to watch the Commanders game coming up on Saturday. Now, for those watching that aren't aware, Mick and I are both admins over at the Houday Nation Facebook group. Make sure that if you haven't already, join the group as we're going to have some great stuff planned throughout the year. That is the group that was originally, we had about 175,000 members, and then about a year ago, almost to the date, Facebook shut us down because somebody tried to live stream the Rams game in the group. So they shut us down. We've been rebuilding, and I think we're at a little over 75,000 right now. So if you were in the original, make sure you join this one as well. It's run by the same admin team. We do pretty much the same thing and so on. But Mick, you had the idea that we're going to start doing our post of the week from that group. Since we're both the admins, we both pretty much see every post that comes through. Mick, are you picking one of the fake jerseys that is being sold by someone? Is that the group post you're going with?
No, I tried to do something either funny or very thought-provoking, and I actually brought up this guy's point in the podcast regarding the backup quarterback role. So, David Barnett, thank you for being my inspiration for part of this podcast. Your post was very much appreciated, and I'll read through it real quick here. It says, y'all, unless your backup is going to eventually be your starter, a backup QB's most important job is to work with the starter. They watch tape together, they learn from each other, and so on. That's why we kept picking Allen over better quarterbacks. Burrow wanted him because of the insight he offered. Chill out about their ability to play. It doesn't matter who our backup is. If Burrow goes down, the season is over. 100% agree, by the way. A backup is only going to be handing it off or tossing it behind the line. Okay, I don't know about that last sentence, but I mean, backup's probably going to do more than that. But yeah, essentially, it doesn't matter who the backup is. Their role is to assist Joe with his process. And I thought it was a very well-worded post.
Yeah, and I agree completely. It's just like if Burrow is out multiple weeks, or, knock on wood, out for the season, like that's the last thing that we need. Bengals are screwed.
Yeah.
Like there's no other way. But you could easily say if Patrick Mahomes is out multiple weeks, out for the season, Chiefs are screwed. You could say that at just about every single team in the league, that if an elite quarterback is out, Chargers, if Herbert's out, Eagles, if Hurts is out, there is a reason why these guys are the best of the best in the game. I mean, look at the Ravens. They struggled without Lamar.
And they did.
Struggled. And it's just like that's the biggest worry is that you got to figure out. For my post today,
oh, sorry.
Oh no, you're fine. For my post of the day is it's not necessarily a specific one, but it's more of just what I love seeing. Is I always like seeing, and really I guess this is more at the Packers game, is like the pictures of the kids, of parents taking like their kid to their first ever game.
Yeah.
And like seeing the smiles on the faces as they're sitting there, because I mean we both remember, if not our first game, one of the first times that we were in the stadium. You get to feel the energy and so on, even if it's preseason or what. It's special, and I always like seeing that, the smile on the kids' faces, or them getting their first Bengals jersey or something. I like that. That's one of my favorite things that I always like seeing in the group.
Yeah. So just to propose the question to you, what was your first game that you went to?
So I was trying to think about this, and I'm pretty sure that it was either in first or second grade. It was a preseason game. They hosted the Colts. And in fact, I have a program from that day because sidebar on that for those watching or listening is growing up, Mick knows this. My next door neighbor was Jeremy Johnson, who played for the Cincinnati Bengals. He was the fullback. So he gave us tickets to like the final preseason game. And we went, and then he also gave us like backstage passes. I don't even know if it's still a thing or not, but we got to like go down outside the locker room. So when the players left to go get in their cars, they would walk past us and sign autographs. Now, since this was the last game, nobody that meant anything played in the game. So we got all of these, like the big guys that would come by and sign autographs for all of us. So I have a program that I wish I would have done a better job keeping taking care of, because it is just because clearly when I was 7 or 8 years old, I just flipped through it 100 million times. So it's not in the greatest condition. And I think I've got it here. And if not, it's at my parents' house, but that was probably the first Bengals game that I ever went to, because I remember getting all the autographs from all of the different players in probably first grade, maybe second grade, but it was the final preseason game against the Colts that year.
Okay, nice.
Do you remember your first one then?
Yeah, so first season I started following, and it was a good time to start following Bengals, I guess. Wasn't first grade. It was the 2003 season where, they climbed out of the basement, went 8-8, Marvin Lewis's first year. And it was a 34-27 win against the Texans. I don't remember too much of it other than I loved being there.
In fact, now that I'm saying this, I did go to a game prior. I guess that's the first game I remember, because I went to, I think it was a preseason game against the Lions, and maybe like 02.
Okay.
That, in fact, I think I was looking at I found the ticket stub a couple of weeks ago when I was organizing in here and found it, and I should maybe if I go looking for it this weekend, I can find it. But that's probably the actual first game, but the Colts game is the first one I actually have memory from.
Yeah, so going back to your Colts game, and this is a question I don't know if you're going to remember. Do you remember? I think I remember you doing this. You write a personal narrative in elementary school about that?
Probably. How do you remember that? How do you remember
I have
that?
got just random stuff swirling through my brain.
Yeah, I think probably I did, but how do you remember that?
I don't know. I don't know, but I do remember this story a little bit. And
probably yes, because I think it was yes. I now that you're saying this, it is probably true that I did, and it sounds familiar. So that would have been either first or second grade, something like that. I don't remember. I could probably Google it right now and figure out. I guess it would have been like 04, maybe 2004 season, 2003 season, or something.
Yeah. Well, they play the Colts every preseason.
Yes, but only one of them would have been at home. So I can just Google right now as I'm looking to see if I can't find the 2004 Cincinnati Bengals season. And if my internet will work, we can see if we can't figure out. And I can probably, that's the best part about the internet right now is that, are you not even going to show me the preseason? Well, maybe not. No, it was fun while it lasted, I guess, right?
I don't know. It might show up on a Wikipedia, honestly.
That's what I was doing. I was looking on the good old Wikipedia, because that's the world's greatest. And this is, great podcasting here by us, is that we're talking about the 2004 preseason, like what everybody wants to listen to and hear conversations about it. But we're 2 weeks away from actually getting going. What else are you going to talk about? We will say, though, that next week our show is going to be entirely focused on the defense. We're going to be breaking down each position, the questions that surround it. And I think that weirdly enough, and I don't know if weirdly enough is the right way to describe it, but there's almost less questions about the defense. It's pretty set in stone.
Yeah, I really think the only questions is how many they keep at each position. Are they going to go safety heavy? Are they going to, how many linebackers they're going to have, because they don't have a lot of depth after 5 linebackers. I don't see anybody after the 5 guys I'll mention next week making the team. So it depends. The question is how many guys are there going to go at each position, and I think that'll be an interesting thing to see shake out.
We'll definitely recap to the Commanders game and have our hot takes from that and talk about that. That'll be coming up. We'll be every Wednesday at 8 o'clock Eastern time. Make sure you follow us on all of our social media channels, and we'll also post this to podcast channels. We're working on getting to Apple. Apple's been a little difficult, but we're on pretty much all of the other ones for you to be able to go back and listen to the podcast as well. subscribe. Do that. I want to give a shout out again to Josh Isles for bringing us on at WDN today, as we're happy to be on there. And make sure you follow that page. Follow us on Jungle Juice, all of the different ways that we have for you to join us as well.
Yeah, that's please hit the subscribe button wherever you choose to get your media from. And a huge shout out to Josh. Thank you so much for allowing us to be on your page.
And we're always open for suggestions, segment ideas, and so on of what we can potentially bring you. And because we want this podcast to be for the fans, by the fans, and so on, because we are season ticket holders. So we're going to be living vicariously through you. And as I know I said last week, if it needs to be a therapy session, we'll have a therapy session.
For sure.
Mick, it's been a pleasure as always. We'll be back here again Wednesday of next week at 8 o'clock Eastern for another edition of Jungle Juice.
Thanks for watching, guys.